Okay. And you can hear me okay, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Mbula mbula everyone. Thank you for joining in. So if you've just joined in on the Zoom room, if you can mute your laptop or your device, that'll be great. Okay. Thank you so much for those of you who've just joined us in the Zoom room. I've just also activated the live on my Facebook page, so it'll be uh, live through the Zoom, but also live streamed as well on my Talanoa with Dr. T Facebook page. Yeah. So greeting everybody in the Zoom room, and also greeting everyone online on social media. So thank you so much for joining us in this very special webinar. So very warm greetings from California State University here in Los Angeles. It's a little bit overcast today. It was raining in the morning. But I think we've just started the daylight saving on Sunday, so summer is coming around the corner. So very warm greetings to you all, wherever you're logging in from. We send our aloha, our maolele, our talofa lava, and half a day to you all. So today we'll be traveling to the beautiful island of Guam. We are so grateful that we have our guest speaker who is joining in from Guam, Mr. Patrick Lujan, and we're so grateful that he can say yes to this invitation because I know he's a very busy person himself with a lot of work and role and responsibilities that he had to fulfill in Guam. But we are so happy that he's able to be here with us to share his story with us, how he ended up to be doing the role that he's actually doing right now in Guam. As a backstory, for those of you who may not know, last year around November, there was about 20 of us from the Pacific, mainly from the United States, US territories, so including many of the islands in Northern Oceania and American Samoa. 20 of us, sponsored by the Association of Tribal Archives, Library, and Museums. So I'd really like to acknowledge Susan Feller and Melissa, who welcomed 20 of us into the family of our indigenous brothers and sisters here on Turtle Island, here in the United States of America. It was the first time ever that they've done the invitation to invite us from the Pacific. So it was so beautiful to see all of us in one place at the same time for that particular week in November of 2024. And Patrick was one of them. So as Elinda Naputi, our first speaker. And I understand Elinda is currently sitting in the Zoom room, Bulavinaka and half a day, Elinda. So it's wonderful that you're joining us today, Linda, and your wonderful staff as well in your library in Saipan. And so I came up with this idea of not just saying goodbye to them at the airport when we left after the conference in Palm Springs, California. I thought, maybe we need to continue this conversation and talk to people and get to know them a little bit more. And so that's how my idea of the webinar came about. And I'm so glad that the California State University here in Los Angeles have agreed for me to do this. And so I'm so happy that the moment is here right now. And so to kickstart our talk story, as they call it in Hawaii, talk story or talanoa in Fijian or Tongan or Samoan, or just sharing our story, we're going to play a beautiful song, a Chamorro song from Guam, chosen by Patrick Lujan himself. So let us do that. So we're going to share the music. And thank you as well for everybody who are here. Thank you for taking the time away from your own very busy schedule to be here and listening to me and Patrick. So we're gonna listen to this beautiful song, and it's called Beautiful Guam. So very relevant and so much needed that we need to hear such beautiful music from the Pacific. And here is beautiful Guam. I hope you will enjoy it.
On the island of Guam, there are coconut trees. It's a beautiful place when the moon is shining over the seas. It's a paradise in Guam. Friendly people are there. You can hear their songs all day long, far from over the sea. The ship is sailing through the harbor. The people there are waiting, and the passengers are waiting to see the Isle of Guam. So farewell to you. I will bid you adieu till we meet again someday, my friend, on the island of Guam.
On the island of Guam,
On the island of Guam,
there are coconut trees.
there are coconut trees beneath the mountains that Tano and Samahi and Nihulu. It's a paradise in Guam. Friendly people are there. You can hear their songs all day long, far from over the sea. The ship is sailing through the harbor. The people there are waiting, and the passengers are waiting to see the Isle of Guam. So farewell to you. I will bid you adieu till we meet again someday, my friend, on the island of Guam. Till we meet again someday, my friend, on the island of Guam.
Beautiful. Wow. Thank you so much, Patrick, for that beautiful music. Now you're making me homesick to visit Guam again. I think I've been very blessed to have been to Guam not once, but twice. And I hope to be back again. Such a beautiful country, beautiful place, beautiful people, and of course, beautiful food. So, Vinaka Vakalevu, Patrick, for being here with us today and welcoming everyone who've joined us via Zoom and also online via my Talano with Dr. T page. So welcome to this March the 12th webinar where we're spotlighting our brothers and sisters from the Northern Pacific, and we are focusing on our heritage heritage specialists, I call them, those who work in the field of libraries, museums, and archives. And today we have Patrick, who represents the Guam State Historic Preservation Office. So it's a different role that he plays, but we're going to learn more about it now. And so I would like to also encourage those of you who are watching via Zoom and also online, if you have questions for Patrick, type it on the chat on either platform, and I'll be happy to ask Patrick on your behalf. So, Patrick, warm welcome to the program, and Mbulavinak and aloha to you.
Today, yeah. Good morning, good evening to you, and thanks for having me on. Pleasure. Again, like you stated, starting that island group in November was very special, and I'm so glad and happy that we're continuing the discussion and just the relationships. It's those are priceless. So I'm glad to be a part of it.
Thank you so much. Yes, absolutely. And as I was mentioning to you as well, Patrick, our get together in Palm Spring really reminded me of our ancestors, back in the day where they meet together, on different occasions for ceremonies or for certain events. And for the 20 of us being there at the same time really reminded me of those moments. But now with technology, it doesn't have to stop and start in Palm Springs. We can continue the conversation and utilize technology such as this to get us to know our brothers and sisters a little bit more. We spoke to Elinda 2 weeks ago, and now with you. So maybe we'll start with you. If you can just tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, your upbringing, and your childhood living in Guam.
Sure. So I'm the youngest of 5 children, and my parents were both young kids during World War II. And so I like to consider myself probably the last of the bridge of that era on Guam of the tragic suffering of World War II that our locals had to endure. Um, so, back then, education, I think high school education for my parents was the highest level of, where you got. So my father, I think, he probably graduated with a seventh or eighth grade education level, but he saw the importance of it and, invested in us and sent us to private school here throughout. So I went off and graduated from an all boys school from high school. It's college preparatory, so you're expected to go to college when you go to Father Duenas. And then I just went to UOG. I had a baby right out of high school, so all my hopes and dreams of going off island to further my education just kind of ended there. So he's now 31 years old, but I continued. Got my undergrad and got my master's at UOG as well in public administration. And then, with the prices of gas and food, I went into the Air Force Reserve, to help out my young family at that time and spent 24 years there. I just recently retired as a commissioned officer with the Air Force Reserve in October. So that's one less thing off my plate as I venture into our later stages of life. And, I've been in the local government here on Guam for going on 26, 27 years. Have done different roles, worked with the utilities, with the Guam Waterworks Authority, and then with this job here as the State Historic Preservation Officer, also did a stint for 9 years with the Public Health Emergency Preparedness Program. So dealing with FEMA and public health, preparing for any type of outbreaks. So yeah, it's not just one thing throughout my career and in my life. And then on the side, I'm my trade is actually a journalist, sports journalism. So I've done reporting for the newspaper, done some broadcasting for the local TV and sports broadcasting, and ventured into even creating my own media group on the side here called Guam Sports Network. And, I've got a whole young group of reporters and photographers, mostly in high school and college, giving them the, getting their feet wet in the work environment. And so that one's my passion, actually, as well as here at work with dealing with, culture and preservation.
Wow, Patrick,
Yeah, a lot.
you've worn a lot of very different hats, and that's wonderful to hear.
Very different hats.
Wow.
That's by design, actually, because I'm a student of life and I just want to keep learning. And, I figured that if I was just going to stay in one career field, then that limits myself. And though you'd be an expert at it, I'm always curious about other things in life. And so that was by design to uh, assure that I'm as well-rounded as possible. With my career, even in the Air Force, I started as an enlisted member, and I have a license to drive a bus. So if all things fail, I can go be a bus driver.
That is amazing. And I think that's a benefit of, doing lots of different things. When something like that happens, you've got lots of other options, right?
Absolutely.
I can picture you in a bus, Patrick.
Yeah,
That's wonderful.
I'll drive safe for you.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you. I trust you on this one. Wow. I want to go back to one of the very interesting points you mentioned as a young dad. And I know there'll be many of our, young brothers and sisters as well, maybe some of our listeners who became young moms straight after high school. Sometimes they think that's the end of the world. What was your strategy to keep going?
It's just a drive that was instilled by my father at that time, and you just have to keep working hard, and pushing. And I didn't realize that until after I was a father. And um, as a matter of fact, the light bulb didn't hit until I was probably in my third year of college or my fourth year. And I said, man, this guy he's not pushing me for him, he's pushing me for me. And then it became a self-motivator, to a point where when I actually graduated my undergrad, and I got my certificate, I went straight into the crowd and gave him my certificate, in appreciation for that drive. So that just stuck with me throughout, even now. It just continues to drive me, work hard every day, learn something new every day, no matter what it is. And here's a good thing. When I was going through my undergrad at the University of Guam, on Guam they give senior citizens free tuition. You can attend classes for free. And I don't recall what class it was, but it was Senor John Benevente. I remember he was attending our class, and I don't know what class it was or what the instructor was, but I remember him, and I remember the wisdom that he brought to the class every day. And I ended up wanting to go to class because of him. And I told myself that once I reach that age, I'm going to do the same, and I'm going to give back to the youngsters of Guam at UOG. So I'm almost there. A couple of more years, I'll be there.
Well done. Thank you for openly sharing that, because I know, for many of us growing up in the Pacific, being a young dad and a young mom, it comes with stigma,
Mm.
and sometimes it stops people on their tracks and feel that, this is the end of the world for me. I'm not, I feel worthless. There's nothing I can do right now. But you carried on and look at where you are now.
Yeah.
Um, Thank you so much for those words of encouragement. What about your parents at that time, especially your dad, to see you being a very young father?
They weren't too happy, but the love and support was there. And they were willing to, watch my child while I went to school. Um, and I was very appreciative, and it just comes in line with the familial support, right, for that the islands are known to have. And just, despite some mistakes along the way, the love is still there and the support is still there. And we just we I think that the island families are just more loving and supportive than your more common, Western families, I believe. And that just goes, hand in hand with our cultures, our respective cultures, that, respect and love is embedded deep in our families and our cultures.
Wow, that's a beautiful example, for us parents. Those of us who are listening, those of us who have gone through what Patrick went through, you're absolutely right. We are very blessed in the Pacific that we have that family support, that you
Correct.
won't be able to carry that on your own. Well done. And I think before we go on to the question on your role, I'm just so intrigued by the Guam Sports Network. that you've set up on the side and getting our young, people in Guam, those who love photography, those who love to do camera work, to help you with that. How did the idea come about?
So again, I have a journalism background, right? So I have a history of working in TV and newspaper, radio, and I just decided, that I can do it on my own, and it was just an idea that was in my, I knew the concept and I knew what the final product was going to be, but I had no idea of what the name was going to be, how it's going to look, the color scheme. Um, how much I'm going to charge for advertising. I had no idea how to create a website. Um, and I just started just to formulate it and massage it and just, a lot of people have great ideas and things never come into fruition and it just dies at ideas. I'm just glad that I pushed through it and that was we actually launched the inception was 11/11/11, November 11, 2011. And almost 14 years later, we're still here and still providing some good recognition for the local athletes that put so much work and time into their trade. And just that little recognition that their name is mentioned or their photo is on or it goes on our website or our Instagram. And we've got a really big following on social media and our websites. And so that to me is giving back to the island from the sports side. I don't pay myself for that. Whatever income comes for that, I turn it around and invest it into it or pay for my photographers and reporters. And even that, it's kind of gravitated to really good young adults in our community, and I'm so happy for that. And I've had, reporters that went on to be lawyers. I've got a former reporter that he's finalizing his residency, and he'll be, coming back home to be a doctor. Other reporters are going out and they're in nursing school. And so I've given them a platform to launch them into the working field. Um, Give them an opportunity to go out and because when they go to games they're interacting with other people and they're meeting people in the community. Some of my best friends on island was result of me going out and covering games when I was 20 years old and 18 years old. And they've become lifelong friends. And so it's a social trait that gives these youngsters a chance to get exposed. Some of them have been really shy, and it's broken the mold from a social standpoint, and just so appreciative. And it's media now because of social media. It's not like it used to be. You're not going to make $1 million and make a healthy living off of it. But if you have a passion for it and you want to just get involved, it's a good supplement to whatever the primary job you eventually would go towards. Um, but yeah, it's something. It's like I said, I grew up in a sports family. My brothers were really good football players, American football. My sisters were cheerleaders, and so I grew up in that environment, and I just loved it. And it just stuck with me. So yeah, that's actually my other duty on island outside of my historic preservation job. Interesting, huh?
That is wonderful. What a wonderful example. To show us, that if we have a passion, yeah, for something, I'm sure that that passion drives you to do more and do better,
Yeah,
and I'm sure it's good for your mental health too. What do you think?
it is, of course, because it keeps you busy. It's kept me busy, outside of my regular work here in the government. Um, and just again, the social aspect of it, right? And meeting new people. Generally speaking, sports is a positive thing. It's a healthy thing. There's not much confrontation unless referees make a bad call. Um, but it's generally a positive aspect. And I couldn't be more blessed right now, having pretty much two jobs that I have passion for, right? And one is sports and one is our culture. And I couldn't have asked for a better situation, of where I am today.
Thank you so much for that, Patrick. And I'm glad you've mentioned culture, and now we'll dive straight into, your role as a historic preservation officer. So if someone who's listening in today, they might be wondering, what is that job? What does it mean to be a historic preservation officer?
Sure. Well, it originates from the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966 that the U.S. Created. Um, you know, it's from a federal standpoint and a federal mandate. Every state and territory is supposed to have a historic preservation office with a state historic preservation officer overseeing these programs. And basically, it mandates, all federal funds that are going to be used, that it has to be vetted through the Historic Preservation Office. And they have tribal historic preservation offices too for the American Indians. Um, and so I think it's a wonderful concept that America put together, because it allows, experts in a sense, archaeologists to look at, where the monies are going towards, and just to so we vet all federally funded projects, everything. And so it could be inundating, for the most part. Um, but I think it's such a wonderful thing that the federal government has done that. So knowing federal laws is very critical in my position. Looking at CFR 38 and 36, Section 106 is a huge component into what we do, and looking at all the projects, not only from an archaeological standpoint, but also from an historic architecture standpoint, looking at older buildings. Imagine, this law didn't go into effect until 1966. So imagine all the projects prior to 1966 that had probably gone and demolished and never to be, you know, documented, or, you know, no efforts of preservation were placed. And that's, once you do that, you just kind of wash that off the face of the earth. And unless, somebody would put that into writing of who lived through that time, that could dissolve, into the memories. Um, so luckily, I think, and if you really think about it, it's almost 60 years of that. And each and every jurisdiction has taken that and expanded, to whether their states or their islands, and made, adjustments to their own local laws, because that's only affected by, the federal guidelines. And so, you know, all of us have different local laws, and man, it ranges, right, from really strict to really lenient. And I have to be very familiar with that as well, because basically I'm playing dual-hatted, actually, like three hats, because dealing with whether the property is or, a project is federally funded, locally funded, privately funded, and all three are different as far as the approach to the processes and what we're looking at. I'm not a fan of that, of the three-prong approach. I think it should be a one-prong approach. But that's what we're living with now. And again, one of the other things that I have to deal with is trying to make that a one-prong approach. Because if you really look at it, and you look at our history, and look at our older maps, the oldest maps you can find, there were no boundaries really, right? There was, this village here and that village here, but there were really no defined boundaries. Now there are. Now there's defined properties. Who owns this side? And once upon a time, that wasn't the case. That this fence belongs to the U.S. military on this side, and this fence belongs to local government or a private, private landowner, and we have to address them differently. Um, and I don't agree with that. I think it should be addressed the same way, because if, once upon a time that was one, it wasn't divided.
Mm.
And I always have to, I try to take that approach where, look at it where what we find, let's say we find human remains or, different artifacts, go back in time to where when that time stopped, and whether the remains were 500 years old or 1,000 years old or 2,000 years old, what was happening then? How can we respect this piece of property or this project, so to say, at that time,
Mm.
right? So, if we find World War II remains of Japanese, we would try to respect the Japanese way and their culture, and we get the Japanese embassy involved. Or if it's an American soldier, we'll get the component of Department of Defense and to help us and dig deeper into, proper procedures of whatever the case may be. So there's a lot of gray areas
Mm.
um, in what we do, and those gray areas I actually like because it's not, those though we have some guidelines and confinements, we also can adjust accordingly based off of what the matter is. I know I've went like way different directions there, but hopefully I answered that question.
That is amazing. Yeah, you absolutely answered that because, we kind of confirmed that your role encompasses, yeah, lots of things, and you highlighted the importance of knowing your law, yeah, the legislation, because every case
Yeah,
that you will see are different. As you said, some of it may involve private landowners, and then the others might be to do with the U.S. military.
right.
Thank you for highlighting that. And my next question is, you've talked about the different activities of your work. What would be a typical day be like for a historical preservation officer?
A lot of it, because we're in the permitting process, right, for local government, um, and also with the federal government. So a lot of it is research. It's research intensive. I've got, a couple of qualified, what they call SOI, qualified archaeologists on staff. Some archaeological technicians. They do a lot of research. So they go to historical mappings, GIS, looking at different archaeological surveys, looking at what they call is APE, the area of potential effect, would be like a half-mile or quarter-mile radius of the anticipated project. And then we kind of expand it and see what historical work has been done in that area, and kind of gives us a sense of whether or not further research or surveys would be required. Um, and so that would be a typical day, and just working different lanes. I just got back from Washington, D.C. I saw Sandy there. Um, working with the National Park Service, different partners from the federal side. There's a ACHP, Advisory Council for Historic Preservation. I don't know if anybody knows too much about that, but that's actually a bona fide, federal agency. Um, so they play an important role too. And so, again, the role of and I think there's a misconception that people believe that we can stop projects or terminate project. That's not our role. Our role is to consult and advise, and educate. I think education with our customers, developers, investors, all of that is crucial because,
Mm.
I think historically our office has been looked at as an obstacle of progress,
Mhm.
or deterrent of progress, and it takes too long, or so they try to avoid us, really.
Mm.
And I think a lot of it, and here on Guam, at least since I've taken over, I think it's, we made it a point to share that we're here as consultants to help. And I think you know, when we educate developers and investors and saying, hey, we're not here to stop your project or to, you know, whatever, but we're here to give you information or to gather information with you or along with you that would enhance your property. It would enhance your project. Number one, to respect what was there before you put up some type of building, right? Number two, to avoid any type of major damage to whether it be a burial site or archaeological findings, and to address those properly and to handle them properly. Um, so a lot of it has to deal with communication with our customers, letting them understand what could potentially be there. And I always say if you come in early, it's better because we get that dialogue going and we can avoid potential long delays or what have you. So you know it's never a same day. It's not routine. It's as most people would probably think when it comes to government offices. Um, and so it's something that it's not a job for me. I really enjoy it. I love it. Um, because I really feel that there's a difference that I'm making in our community.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Patrick. And yeah, acknowledging Sandy. Thank you, Sandy, for joining in today. You mentioned Washington, D.C., and I'm sure part of that role as well is travel. Yeah, to see other, partners, other organization that you work with over there, the consultation, the advice. I really like when you mention part of the role of your office is to educate. I
Hmm.
think it's really important, right? Because as you said, sometimes the developers and the investors, they think you are trying to block, right? What they're planning to do. So my next question now goes to, in terms of the heritage stories that you encounter as part of your role, because you mentioned, I was interested in what you mentioned before about some old village sites. Now,
Hmm.
typically in many places in the Pacific, a lot of these village sites have oral history, stories that would have belonged to some of the Chamorro villages that were there before. Would you like to explain a little bit more about that in terms of these heritage stories? Do you capture them as part of your work?
Yeah, we do, and we're putting more emphasis on it now more than ever, I believe. I think our office and I'm not sure if it's the same with other SHPO offices nationwide, but for the longest time we've you know been focusing on the archaeology side, and that is probably the biggest component of what we do. However, um, there's oral history side of it, not just what we dig up and what we find underground or on the surface. Um, and we started to do that recently. It's working with the community, sometimes sending out press releases, saying that, hey, we found this at this area, um, open to the public to allow them to say, if you remember, have any stories of this area growing up, please get with us, send us a message, so we can add value to the story, because that's what we're doing. We're capturing stories, right? Um, and so I think that's been working really well. We've gotten, on some projects, some really, really good background stories that was not captured. You can't capture it from archaeology. You can't. And so, it's definitely added value to that area as we capture it and document it and file it away for future researchers or whomever wants to read the stories on those. So yes, it's a definite component that adds huge value to what we do.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Patrick. And I know, with the length of time you've spent in this role, you must have had a lot of highlights, for some of the work you've done around the island. And you mentioned, you've traveled, a lot to the United States. Are there any particular highlight or any particular project that you hold dear to your heart?
Yeah, I'll share too. Number one, it's, for the longest time, and Sandy's very familiar with this, with the Hans Hornbostel collection, right? This is an amateur archaeologist back in the 1920s that was on Guam, did a lot of you know removal of artifacts and human remains for some reason. I don't know why. Um, and he did some in the CNMI as well, and brought a huge collection of artifacts and human remains to the Bishop Museum in Hawaii. They were there for this is going over a little bit over 100 years. We brought the remains back to Guam in the late 1990s. The artifacts are still there. So we're making a big push. The government, with myself and the Department of Chamorro Affairs, the museum folks here, working with the Bishop Museum, we've actually hosted a team of theirs because they want to, before they do allow those artifacts to come back home, they want to finalize a final report. And so they actually took a trip out here to try and walk the steps of Hans Hornbostel. They did that, I think, a year and a half ago. And so what I'm hearing is that they're almost done with the final report. There was extensive field reports, but Hornbostel himself never finalized a final put all of that together in a final report. So the Bishop Museum team is actually doing that, and they should be wrapping up pretty soon. They've been working on it for probably over a year. And now it's, we've been working together on the plans to how we're going to bring those home and repatriate or rematriate those artifacts back home. That's a big one. Can't wait, as we see that into fruition. There's some really nice artifacts that he took that you don't see around. And so working with the Guam Museum, they're planning to like do a mobile museum or something to take, have some of those collections and take it to schools, different schools around the island, and have these students like actually touch these sling stones and these unique artifacts. So that's one. The other thing that I've been working on is a national monument for reburials. Again, most of that was coming from the Hornbostel collection. We have over 3,000 ancient Chamorros that need to be reburied. And it's been a long process. It's required local law to get it done. Within the last couple of years, I've been lobbying and soliciting and fighting hard to get the funding for the building of it. And I finally did that last year. I got $5 million from our local government to approve for the building of that. So now I'm working with the University of Guam to do a partnership. We've got the plans already laid out. Now, I need to work with them to get the inventory all squared away, all properly done. Working with osteologists. I've actually got a collection of all the senior archaeologists on Guam, whether they work in the government, the private sector, or for the federal government. And we are I got them together to collaborate on this and to do a proper inventory of all those human remains. So I think those are the two big projects that I would say it's my biggest ongoing achievements, I guess. Because it's been slow, but we are moving forward on those two huge adventures and endeavors, and then I can retire happy once those two are done.
Wow, that is beautiful. I think That brings a lot of smiles on many of our faces. Thank you so much for sharing that, Patrick. Just shows that your work does bring a lot of happiness, I think, to many of our communities, particularly in Guam. And I think you mentioned a few people, the archaeologists and osteologists. So for those of you who are listening, osteologists, these are specialists of people who look after bones. Yeah,
Yeah,
so the bones, a bone specialist.
bone
So,
specialist.
yeah, bone specialist. So you have the doctors that work in the hospital, and you have the osteologists there who work in the field when they look at materials that are excavated there, that are being dug up. So thank you for sharing those roles. And archaeologists, for those of you who may have heard this word for the very first time, these are the people that dig. Yeah, they excavate in many of our ancient sites so that they can see what our ancestors used to do. Yeah, hundreds
Yeah,
and thousands of years ago. Yeah, so it's a lot of hard work, but it is
yeah,
fun. Yeah,
it
it's
is.
fun because you get to see and touch, and hold you with your hands, things that our ancestors have used, like adzes and
Yeah.
shells and other beautiful ornaments. So there'll be part two of this conversation. This is amazing. Thank you for that. Now, Patrick, you've highlighted the highlights and some of the wonderful things, but I'm sure you also have challenges, in your line of work. You've already mentioned, one before in terms of how sometimes people think that your department blocks move,
Yep.
projects. Is there one in particular you want to share that is sometimes like a problem or issue that you face in your line of work?
Absolutely. That's our local laws. Our local laws, which started back in, just a couple of years after the enactment of the NHPA. If you look at the genesis of Guam historic preservation laws, it's a one pager. I think it's back in 1969 or 1970. Since then, there was a huge push in local legislation for historic preservation in the 80s, and since then, it's all been band-aided. There's some that are conflicting. For example, there's one portion of our law that says the artifacts belong to the landowner, and there's another law that says the artifacts belong to the people of Guam. Which is it, right? Um, I've come up with my staff over the last couple of years to come up with a revised what would it be called the Historic Preservation Act of Guam. Um, what would the best case scenario would look for us, knowing in fact that it would probably look different once it goes out on the streets and being vetted by the community and businesses, because they're probably not going to like what we put. Um, but that's the biggest thing for me is our laws need to be better. It's soft. It favors private landowners. It doesn't it restricts our authority. And all I ask, and I've been soliciting and lobbying with local legislators, is get us to that threshold of where the federal guidelines are. Let us at least operate at an even level of where the feds have placed us. That's, give us that ceiling, because our floor is very soft. And politics is politics, and we got a new legislature again in on Guam, and a new oversight chairperson, and I've one of my jobs is to go and sit down with them and educate them and tell them where we are. And unfortunately, historic preservation is not health, education, and safety, right? Those are the big three in any government. And so we're not a priority in the grand scheme of governance. Um, but that's one of the things, again, is just constantly educating new legislators, new oversight chair people. Everyone wants to help, but then when it's time to actually put legislation in, whether it's fear of something or who knows. I've even offered, let me lobby every single senator, and I'm willing to do that and educate them. I even had breakfast in my office and invited all the senators so I can just give them an overview of the office and what our challenges are. And most of them came. I think three-fourths of them came, probably just because they knew there was going to be breakfast. But um, trying to do all of this stuff and um, it's difficult and sometimes you lose hope but you gotta just keep going and you gotta just keep what you believe is the right direction. And so yes, our local laws definitely need to be updated and um and strengthened. Luckily, we got audited from an operational standpoint from our Office of Public Auditors, and they've agreed with me in that sense of the need for that. So that could be an extra weapon for me when I go and continue to solicit for change, because it's been supported and confirmed with our public auditor that yeah that it does require that and it needs it. So that's probably my biggest challenge in my line of duty right now.
Wow, thank you for sharing that and being open about that because that's something that we're also facing, yeah, in different Pacific Islands,
Mhm.
particularly with our legislation, yeah, that's not very strong. I think you've reminded us the importance of revising our laws and making our laws relevant, yeah, to today.
Oh
And I
yeah.
also love the fact that you mentioned that you wanted to have them vetted by the community, the stakeholders. And that's wonderful to see. I mean, compared to 1969, 1970, it was very different back then. But
Correct.
now, you have, local lawyers who can come on board to help you in that regard. Thank you so much for that. And now,
Mm.
in terms of, our archaeological sites in our islands, particularly in the case of Guam, some of your Chamorro sites, what would be your advice for our local people to look after these sites, these old village sites in their islands?
Yeah, it's hard to really say on that, and again, it's got to be a collaborative effort, not just the government's duty, right? You got to go grassroots,
Mm,
and the government can do only so much, right? And the mayor of these villages can only do so much. Um, but again, it's identifying, it's knowing the history and respecting the place. And I think, I'm sure we have to do a better job at that. Um, um, we've got some new mayors that were just elected, right? That we have to go back and say, hey, I'm not sure if you realize where the historic sites are in your village. Here's the list. Work with us to protect these, doing inventories of these historic sites, right, and getting updates of the condition of it, and can we, back when they were initially identified as historic sites, was there oral history done? Did that added value to those locations? Was it conducted? Is it too late to be to be conducted? Um, and that's again one of the projects that my team here is doing is updating the sites of as the files. Go out and take a hard look at it. Take pictures. How does it look compared to when it was first nominated or placed into the National Register of Historic Places? Um, and then educating, the mayors first of all, because they're the guardians of the villages. Um, and then after that, make it into within that area and hopefully have them um, you know, care for it and be caretakers, because I believe us in this office, we are what we call stewards of the land. And so, taking that approach, um, and just making sure that those places are protected is so essential.
Thank you so much. And I know there's many of our friends who are listening in are from different island groups. That's really great. And I mean, you've highlighted the importance of identifying the sites, knowing the history, and I really like the inventory side of things. As you said, the government can do, X, Y, and Z, but then the others can be done by us as community members. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And again, as you mentioned, you highlighted other organizations like the museum. So maybe, some of the work can be done by our museum folks as well. And there may be some oral history that has been previously recorded. So it's really great that you mentioned that. So there may be some amazing opportunities for young, youths in Guam who love to do research to come on board.
Hmm.
And this will be a wonderful opportunity for them. Yeah. So again, thank you so much, Patrick, for sharing your story with us. And now, to wrap up with our talk story today, is there any other comments that you'd like to share or words of encouragement, particularly to our young people? And also today, if I may share, Patrick, that we have some of my students in Fiji that I conducted I call it the Vanua Customer Service Program. Vanua means land in Fiji. So it was a customer service course that was done from an indigenous Fijian perspective, how to do it the way we would have done it as indigenous people. So there's a few of them listening in, and they would love to hear some words of wisdom from you, Patrick.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, just, get involved and, take deep dives, right? Just especially if you're passionate about it, take deep dives into it. There's so many things to do within historic preservation. Whether you're going to work for the government in roles like mine, whether you're going to work for you know, the arts and humanities section, the libraries, the museums. So many different roles that you can gravitate to and cling on to and make a difference in our culture, our heritage, our preservation. It's so many opportunities, and what I see here, even as archaeologists, right? Yeah, there's a global need for archaeologists. I guess people just don't want to dig, with toothbrushes anymore, and then go back to their office and write a report. It's a science that needs to continue to it needs revitalization, really. And that's another project that I'm working on here, is the revitalization of archaeology and anthropology. But yeah, cling on to it and enjoy every step of growth and learning, because the next generation, you will be the next generation that's going to take this with you, and the generation after that is going to look up to you guys and hope for the same thing.
Wow, that is wonderful. Thank you so much, Patrick, for those amazing words of wisdom, encouraging many of us, especially our young listeners who are listening in online on my social media page as well as a Zoom. I really like the point you mentioned. Take a deep dive, make a difference, and do what you can do. And I think the passion that you brought in, Patrick, to this talk story today really resonate, with a lot of our listeners who are sending in a lot of love hearts online. So thank you for those of you who've been watching us for the last 50 or so minutes. And again, from us, Patrick, we've really enjoyed getting to know you a little bit more. We didn't have a chance to have more talk story when we were in Palm Springs, because there was how many thousands of people there, right? We had a few moments so that we were able to talk and share a few things, but this webinar is an opportunity for us to know you, your offers, as well as the beautiful island of Guam. So what is the time like over there in Guam right now, and what's the weather like? We're just very curious.
It's 11 o'clock. It's almost lunchtime. What is it? Wednesday? Thursday? It's Thursday now.
Thursday.
Yeah.
It's Thursday. Okay. I like it when they said lunchtime. So That's a good point of reference. So, on that note, Patrick, from all of us who are here on Zoom as well as on my Facebook page, we just want to say, Vinaka Vakalevu, Mahalo Nui, thank you so much for being here with us. I got to know the hats that you wear. You don't just wear one, but there's a couple. But it is an wonderful example, yeah, for many of our young folks who are watching, that you can follow your passion. You don't have to do only one thing. If this is your job right here and there's other things that you want to do on the side, go for it. Yeah, do
Yeah.
it. As I always say, Patrick, life is short. If you have a passion for something, go and get it. Yeah.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Patrick, and you have a wonderful rest of the day. And I will see you online when we will meet again next week with our sisters from Palau.
Thank you so much, Dr. T, for having me.
You're most welcome. Take care.
Okay. Adios.
Yeah. Adios. Oh, thank you very much, Patrick. Wow. What a wonderful treat, yeah, that we all able to hear the wonderful story from the beautiful island of Guam. Also acknowledging Sandy, who's also here, one of our colleagues from Guam who was with us in Palm Springs last year. She will be our guest in 2 weeks' time. So please join us again in 2 Thursdays. And also acknowledging our first speaker, Elinda Naputi, from the beautiful island of Saipan, who was our first speaker on this webinar series. Yeah, so it's really great that we can be able to host our brothers and sisters from the Northern Pacific. It's really wonderful. As I always say, to my colleagues, we live in this beautiful, mighty Pacific Ocean. We have thousands of islands, and yet because we are so far away from each other, we should look at ways to connect. And what a way to do it, through technology. And we have the Zoom. And this is something I have to say too. I really want to acknowledge, and yeah, the 2020 COVID-19, as much as we say that we don't have good memories about this virus, COVID-19, when we flip it, it really taught us that technology can bring us together. Yeah. And so my program that we're on right now on Talanoa with Dr. T started from COVID-19, and it's still going on now until 2025. So I'm thinking of continuing this platform so that we can get to know each other more, and we can break down those divides, right? Because our ancestors, they did not divide our islands up, right? The ocean was like a highway. The ocean connected all of us. So they can just go on the canoe and they visit our brothers and sisters in Pohnpei. They can go to Yap. They can go to Kosrae. They can go to Saipan. They can go to Satawal. And so what a wonderful way that we can be able to be together for this last hour. I learned so much about Guam and learned so much about Patrick and his upbringing. And I hope that some of the key points that he shared today will empower you. Whatever projects that you're doing, if you're feeling like giving up, don't give up. Right? You just heard the story from Patrick. Yeah, he was a young dad, and he kept going, and his situation fueled him to do better and achieve his goals. So that is a wonderful encouragement for all of us. So from me here in California, on behalf of the College of Ethnic Studies here at Calstate, LA, just like to take this time to thank you all for listening in and for joining in this Talanoa. And I really, really appreciate you all. And we will see you again next week on Thursday. So Thursday your side and Wednesday here at 5 p.m. We'll keep the same timetable, the same day, Wednesday, 5 p.m. in California. And then you just go to the world clock and find out what time is it in your time zone. All right. So next week we will be visiting the island of Palau. So that is really, really wonderful. Thank you, Leora. Thank you for our brothers and sisters from Saipan. Thank you for joining us. And those of you joining in from the beautiful Guam, thank you again. And for Fiji, those of you listening in from Australia, New Zealand, I acknowledge you all. I'm bidding you farewell. And you all do take care. and I'll see you all next week. Vinaka Madamata. Bye, everyone. Vinaka Salome, Vinaka Lemeki. Thank you, everybody. Tunggu Vinaka Menisilandi. Thank you, those of you listening in from New Zealand. Joe Mbele Botua. Buli Vinaka Ndaku Valentino, May Yokalandi. Thank you again for those of you watching in from Australia, from Guam, and here in the United States. Acknowledging all of you, and I hope that our session today was fruitful. And again, thanking our wonderful guest, Patrick Lujan, for sharing his story with us. Vinaka Vakalevo. Thank you, Aruka Fiji. Vinaka for listening in. Vinaka Vakalevo. Ratu and the team in Rail Street in Suba. Ni mo demanda.